Every morning in Seoul's buzzing financial district, a man sits behind a polished mahogany desk in his sleek, high-rise office with hands resting neatly on a stack of documents. One by one, investors walk through his door and hand him their life savings. He accepts each investment with a warm smile and a promise of life-changing returns. After each contribution, this financial wizard leans back in his chair and smirks because his business is booming. Millions of dollars flow through his network every week as South Korea cherishes its financial genius. Much of his day is spent with politicians seeking his advice, business leaders dying for his approval, and closed-door meetings with the country's future president. On the surface, he's a hero and a revolutionary. But beneath the surface, he is building an empire based on a lie so intricate that even his closest confidants, including his own wife, cannot see through it. No investor knows they are about to lose a staggering $490 million combined. This is the story of Chan-kyung, South Korea's saving bank mogul who turned lies into millions and fooled an entire nation. Born in 1956 in Yesan, South Korea, Chan-kyung grew up in extreme poverty and never went past middle school. Naturally, he hated that life had dealt him such a harsh hand, and he always wondered why he had to suffer for his family's failures. Why wasn't he born wealthy and free to live without constant worry about money or survival? Knowing that his fate was in his own hands, Kim promised to break the shackles of generational misery by any means necessary, even if it meant faking his way into the most elite school in the country. After completing mandatory military service in 1979, Chan-kyung lied and socially engineered his way into the Seoul National University Law School, taking advantage of weak document verification processes back then. He attended lectures, mingled with the brightest students, and even joined law students' clubs. Kim's impersonation was so convincing that he was made the president of a student group for returning law students. And even his wife-to-be believed she was marrying a future lawyer from the prestigious SNU. Chan-kyung even managed to fool the law school dean, who personally officiated his wedding in 1983. The same year, his first scam would come crashing down. In 1983, SNU began compiling its annual yearbook, and, of course, Chan-kyung, being one of the brightest and socially apt students, had to be there, but he was nowhere to be found. Why? Because he never officially enrolled in the school. The SNU staff naturally couldn't find any traces of him whatsoever. Neither was Kim's name nor his student number in the university records. Who could he be? A cunning imposter the university would soon find out. Chan-kyung was caught red-handed, but since his story wasn't widely covered in the news, he kept on pretending to be an SNU graduate to enter elite business and social circles. For instance, Kim next infiltrated the Daewoo Group, one of South Korea's largest conglomerates, by forging credentials and pretending to be an SNU graduate. But his deception didn't last long, as within 3 months, he was exposed and kicked out of the company. With the Daewoo sacking leaving a major stain on his resume, no employer wanted to touch Chan-kyung, and for obvious reasons. I mean, who would want a known liar working for them? Kim was effectively blacklisted from the corporate world, but he was never the type to settle for peanuts anyway. Instead of worrying about landing a 9-to-5 job, Chan-kyung set his sights higher. And by higher, I mean orchestrating one of the largest financial frauds in South Korean history. Between 1983 and 1999, Kim Chan-kyung rode Korea's explosive real estate boom to build his early fortune. During this period, land prices were soaring, some years by nearly 30%, as the country industrialised and regulations remained loose. Developers who acquired land early or flipped properties during this golden window made gigantic profits. Kim too leveraged these opportunities to hoard millions of dollars. But the more he gained, the deeper his greed grew, and little by little, he lost all sense of morality. Kim Chan-kyung had a filthy craving for status, wealth, and influence. He loved being seen, so he made sure to surround himself with powerful figures from politics and business. During his time in real estate, he built a web of connections at the very top, even befriending Lee Myung-bak, who'd later served as South Korea's president from 2008 to 2013. Striking deals with politicians was Kim Chan-kyung's way of protecting himself before he would pull off his massive financial scam through a network of savings banks. But did those shady connections actually save him? Kim Chan-kyung's real estate fortune, coupled with his reputation among the elite, made his entry into the world of finance a cakewalk. In 1999, he bought Jeju's city-based Daegi Mutual Savings Bank, and 3 years later in 2002, he rebranded it as Mirai Mutual Savings Bank. Over the next decade, he aggressively expanded his banking network by acquiring Chungnam Yasan and Seoul Samwan savings banks, turning Mirai into one of South Korea's top 10 entities. But behind the glittering image of a self-made financer, Kim was building an empire of corruption that was about to rock the nation. At Mirai, Kim Chan-kyung's standard operating procedure was reckless to say the least. The notorious financier used his absolute control over Mirai's internal systems to approve huge loans for front companies either owned by him or under borrowed names. These loans were disguised as legitimate by listing fake or inflated collaterals, such as a family-owned real estate or even valuable artworks like a Picasso painting. He secretly used depositors' money to fund these illegal loans without their knowledge or consent. In simpler terms, Kim was taking the money that people had trusted with him and pretending to lend it to his own companies as if they were legitimate loans. Almost immediately after loaning out money, a portion of that sum was funneled right back into his personal accounts, meaning that he was using other people's money to enrich himself and leave depositors with nothing but a lifetime of regret. While he was hiding millions under the carpet, on the surface, he continued to build connections to gain a safety net. For example, in April 2007, he joined the first advanced program in arts and culture at the Korea University Museum. That program had nothing to do with art and culture and everything to do with fraud and deception. The class roster itself was filled with political heavyweights and shady characters. Among the participants were none other than Lee Myung-bak, who at the time was the Grand National Party's presidential candidate. The roster also consisted of Myung-bak's wife and several of Lee's closest associates, including Sejungnamo tour chairman Cheon Shin-il, who has a dark past of his own. In 2008, Lee Myung-bak would become the president of Korea, meaning that his close associates Kim Chung-myung and Cheon Shin-il should carry out their activities with impunity. At least, that's what they may have thought at first. For Kim Chan-kyung, it was supposed to be the dawn of an era of absolute power. But little did he know, the walls around him were already starting to crack. By 2011, public anger against then-President Lee Myung-bak's administration was sky high because of multiple corruption scandals, including one with Cheon Shin-il at its centre. Shin-il received a suspended prison sentence in 2010 for manipulating stock prices and engaging in insider trading. In the same year, A number of savings banks in South Korea began to collapse or were suspended because their capital adequacy had fallen dangerously low and large losses were hidden. One of the major targets of this cleanup was, of course, Kim Chan-kyung, and while his close friend Cheon Shin-il managed to slip away with just a suspended sentence for his shady dealings, Kim's crimes were on a completely different scale. And so was the scrutiny. But before we dive into the full story of Kim Chan-kyung's satisfying fall, hit that subscribe button so you don't get fooled by people like him. The walls started to crumble. As regulators started closing in on savings banks in 2012, the noose tightened around Kim Chan-kyung. As prosecutors investigated Kim Chan-kyung, they found out that Murray issued illegal loans worth around $394.2 million, including $350.4 million through a shell company to fund a golf course project and another $43.8 million for a luxury goods adventure. Investigators also found letters showing he had hidden another $7.2 million in slush funds for trusted insiders who helped maintain his scheme. Kim also engineered cross-loan deals with other troubled savings banks, notably Solomon Mutual Savings Bank, worth $57 million, to disguise financial weakness and create the illusion of liquidity. In some cases, borrowers immediately funneled money back to Kim's personal account, like one of his projects called Samon Gallery, which received a $13 million loan and returned nearly $5.5 million to him within weeks. The court later confirmed that Kim had embezzled $490 million in total, including $42 million for his personal use. The losses were massive, and the scale of Kim's financial scam meant a lengthy prison sentence. But given how cunning and stubborn he was, he obviously wouldn't go down so easily. So how did he get caught? With his career and reputation now in the mud, Kim Chan-kyung attempted to withdraw $17 million from his bank in a single day, which was part of the $42 million he personally embezzled or diverted for his own use. He then attempted to flee South Korea by stowing away on a fishing boat bound for China, but he was captured after 3 days at sea. In January 2013, a Seoul court convicted Kim of breach of trust, embezzlement, and illegal credit extensions totaling $490.2 million, and thus he was sentenced to 9 years in prison. A few months later, Kim Chan-kyung's prison sentence was reduced to 8 years, which means he could have been released by 2020, but his exact whereabouts now remain a mystery. Nevertheless, for a man who once faked his way into Seoul National University and played an entire nation, his jail time was a well-deserved checkmate. Kim Chan-kyung truly was a master of deception, but perhaps not as terrible and manipulative as someone who turned the art of deception into a criminal empire that included murder, drugs, and prostitution. This story of Michael Locke, who became one of the most ruthless underground kingpins in American history, is worth your 10 odd minutes. So click the link on the screen and discover the shocking lengths this American pastor turned businessman went to chase wealth and power.